Listen to the stories of Tinseltown. We got their song, yes we do. So come on dames and come on mugs and all you others too. Listen to the stories of Tinseltown. They're not only good, they're true. True stories of Tinseltown. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to True Stories of Tinseltown. Today, I have a lovely guest for us. He is Dwayne Epstein. He has been on before, and he was a great guest. And today, he's on to talk about his book, Point Blank, Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin, Point Blank. Hey, Dwayne, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Grace?
I am doing swell. I'm doing sweller than swell. We had some snafus to get here, but our snafus seem to be resolved and we're on a roll. So I think we're doing pretty good. And honestly, you guys have to see all the reviews Dwayne's gotten. This book, rave reviews, Dwayne. I was very impressed.
Thank you.
Really, really impressed. And I, of course, enjoyed the book very much. So why don't you start us off with that lovely Lee and the basic gist of the beginning of his life, and then we hop right into his career.
Sure. I'm not quite sure what part you want to start with.
Well, we can start with, his parents, how he's born, then, school. He was a little hellion.
That's a polite way to say it. Like what my grandparents used to say about me. I was full of the devil.
Yeah.
So I could certainly appreciate. I don't think I was as bad as Lee.
He was an imp, man. Woof.
Yeah. He actually, one of my most interesting stories about him when he was in school was he was going to I believe it was a school run by Quakers. And it was a school in which he had to live in, and they had to keep their room clean. And they were about to go through inspection, and his roommate, was sweeping up, and he threw the sweepings out the window. And when Lee saw that, Lee said, "Well, that was a dumb thing to do. Now we're going to have to clean it up." And it was a second-story building. And the guy said something in response, to which Lee said, "You do that again, and I'm going to throw you out that window, too." And it went on for about 5 more seconds, and Lee picked him up and threw him out the window.
And Quakers, that is like so kumbaya, supposed to be so chill. And, Dwayne, it's sort of the theme of the overlying thing is this guy, Lee, always was like violence oriented. He would talk about it, or not that he was a bad guy. I'm not saying that, but he felt that was, I don't know how to explain it. You know what I'm trying to say? He always.
Yeah, I do. And the thing about Lee was, and I make the point in the book, in the opening of the book, that if there is such a thing as, and I put it out there as a theory, I don't know if it's actually true or not, but if there is such a thing as having, violence be inherited or having some form of hereditary aspect to it, Lee's great uncle, Ross Marvin, who went on the Arctic expedition with Admiral Peary, was actually murdered by one of the Eskimos. But it wasn't known it wasn't known at the time that it happened. It was believed he had accidentally drowned. But it came out about 10 years later, when the Eskimo who committed the crime confessed. And there's a whole story to it. And that's just part of it. And his earliest ancestors, the Pilgrims who came to America, I think his name was Matthew Marvin, like back in the 16 or 1700s, he would go into the bars on the Sabbath, on Sundays, and yank people out of the bars by force to make sure they go to church. Things like that.
How Christian.
Yeah, right. And his father, Monty Marvin, was I believe he was a lieutenant in World War One, and he had his share of experiences that he would tell Lee and his younger brother Robert, whom I interviewed. I was lucky enough to find him and interview him, and it's certainly there. And his father was rather abusive himself, and by saying abusive, I think you know what I mean by that.
Yeah, I do.
And consequently, he had a very strange relationship with his father. He loved him, but he didn't like to be physically abused, and yet he was. And then I'm just showing you how far back that this goes. And then came World War II, and he, clearly suffered from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was to discover that with the people I spoke with, and there were many. I spoke to, I believe, over 100 people who had known him or related. I spoke to his son, his first wife, his brother, everybody, colleagues. And the thing is, at first I wasn't that familiar, and I'm no analyst and I'm no specialist in any way, shape, or form. But I can tell you this: if you were to give me a list of the 8 symptoms of PTSD, he had 10 symptoms, and he would probably have had 8. Well, since I wrote the book and it got published, he had all 10. There's no doubt about it. Loud noises would be kind of shocking. He was alcoholic. He had screaming nightmares. Everything you can imagine.
He was injured. He was injured, and he was in the hospital for a long time, and he lost a lot of his.
Yeah, he was convalescent for like 13 months.
Wow.
After the war, because he was shot in the buttocks. Because as he used to like to say, when you're on patrol, like he was, he said, and there's a firefight, there are 2 places you're going to get hit, either in the head or in your ass. Well, I got shot in my ass, and that's how he was a very blunt man too. But he also had a sense of humor about himself. But yeah, he suffered. He suffered greatly.
I have to say, how does anyone come out of the war and not have PTSD?
That's a very good point, especially, if you've been in combat.
Yeah,
and that's another thing I'd like to clarify. I got very lucky. I'm not I'm not Ernie Pyle. I'm not Ernest Hemingway. I've never been in combat in my life, thankfully. But, I don't know how. There's a thing about writing about somebody else's war experience or any experience,
right?
Specifically war experience. If you overwrite it, it comes off phony. If you underwrite it in terms of the adjectives you may use or whatever, it doesn't seem believable. But I got very lucky when I went and met with Robert Marvin at his home in Woodstock, New York, upstate New York. I was able to go through the attic and find all the letters that Lee had written home during the war. And that helped immensely because I was able to put them all in chronological order. He dated them, of course. And basically, he wrote the chapter about his time in the service. And it was pretty harrowing.
Well, I can't imagine. I just can't. And like I said, I don't know how anyone doesn't have it. It just amazes me. And you said he has survivor's guilt. He had that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, that's another symptom, by the way, definitely. After he was wounded in Saipan, which was one of the bloodiest battles of the war, and he was on a hospital ship going home, and he was listening to the strains of Glenn Miller's Moonlight Serenade. He was spoon-fed ice cream, and the ship was still close enough to the battle that he can hear it raging. And he knew that he felt guilty, that he was a survivor while the battle was still raging on. And he lay in his hospital bed and broke down and cried, understandably.
I can't even fathom it. So he was there. And then he went back home, right? That was his first stop, going back upstate.
Yeah, but he didn't go there first. He his parents had bought a summer property in Woodstock, but at the time they had moved to Chicago, and his parents were living in Chicago. And when he got home, actually it was just before he got home, his father was in the war as well, and so was his brother. All three of them were. And apparently his father, Monty's inability to get a job right away, although he eventually did, but at the time it was really hard going, as it was for a lot of returning GIs. And he attempted suicide. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah. It's like he said after committing murder, he couldn't find peace. Because really, you got to do that. Dwayne, we cannot conceive of that. I just, that poor people. I mean, I just can't imagine.
Yeah, see, and there's the thing about warfare, or combat, I should say, that I remember reading an interview with the film director, Kathleen Bigelow, where she said the big secret about war is that some men love it. And that's why in her movie, Zero Dark 30, the character that Jeremy Renner plays, he's dealing with PTSD, and yet he goes back into the service again. Because there's a thing about, and which is something Lee Marvin tried to do as well. There's something about the attraction, for lack of a better word, of warfare. Once you've been in combat, you have this need to go back to it. I've spoken to other veterans, and they've said the same. Matter of fact, when the book first came out, I did a book tour through the graces of my publisher. And I was in, I believe, South Carolina doing a book signing. And a gentleman came up to me, he and his wife came up to me and said he read the book and he understood everything that Lee Marvin was going through. And he goes, as a matter of fact, I've got PTSD, which is why I became a cop, because I was drawn to the violence of the job. And when he told me that, I was like kind of blown away. And apparently it's fairly prevalent. And you know for a fact it's got to be going on right now with what's going on in Iran, and you know, and every war since. And the other thing, the other side of that coin is the fact that even though there has been violence in the world for ages, I mean, go back to Cain and Abel if you believe, but it's just, for some reason, it's really, like I was about to say, the other side of the coin, it's really not a natural phenomenon. Man as a species, and by man I mean everybody, he's not normally adjusted to hurting and killing people. And so consequently, when they do, or are forced to by circumstance, it has an effect, and the most detrimental effect is psychological. It definitely affects the way people act, their behavior, their, you know, everything about them. And Lee Marvin, among others, by the way, not just from combat, but just experiencing warfare. You know, there were others who also became actors. Audie Murphy, who was the most decorated soldier of the war, World War II. Neville Brand. Tell you a real quick aside about Neville Brand. My mother used to volunteer in a psychiatric hospital in California. And there was a guy that was brought in that was kicking and screaming and foaming at the mouth, and they had to put him in a straitjacket. And later that day, when she came home, she was all freaked out about it. She asked me, "Have you ever heard of an actor named Neville Brand?" And I went, "Yeah, of course. He's one of my great character actors. Played a lot of villains." And she said, "Well, that's who they brought in last night, with Neville Brand." So, you know, it's just an aside, but it affects people.
Big time. Big time. So then he ends up going to Woodstock?
Yeah. His parents moved back to Woodstock. And I'm sorry?
It's beautiful there.
Oh, yeah, I've been there. It's gorgeous. And naturally, you know, long before the infamous concert, it had always been a kind of a mecca for bohemians. And his family, you know, liked that. He loved the environment and the atmosphere. There was a bar in Woodstock called the SS Seahorse, I think it was called. And he frequented that place a lot. And, it was shaped like a submarine. And he just enjoyed going there and hanging out with the friends he had made in Woodstock, several of whom I was able to interview. And as one of his friends, his name was, David Ballantyne, whose brother started Ballantyne Books. Anyway, he said that Monty was one tough customer. And the way he put it to me is, he said, if Monty was in the room, you walked a wide path around him because you didn't want to get on his bad side. So that shows you what kind of guy his father was, Lee's father was. And consequently, because Monty was fairly well known in the area, he got Lee a job working as a plumber's assistant, a plumber's apprentice, which he liked. And then that same gentleman, David Ballantyne, David Ballantyne's father was a gentleman named E.J. Ballantyne, who used to hang out with the likes of Eugene O'Neill and other such party animals. And they were doing a play in Woodstock. And that's another thing. For a small community, it had like 3 legitimate live theaters, which, not a lot of small towns have.
No.
And the play that they were doing was at a place called the Maverick Theater, aptly named for Lee. And they were doing a play called Roadside. Excuse me. It's been a while since I've done all this. It was called Roadside. And at a party, David Ballantyne's 21st birthday party, everybody was getting drunk. Everybody was feeling no pain. And one of the actors had fallen sick. And so they were talking about it. And E.J. Ballantyne was talking to somebody else who said that we need a tall Texan who can be, loud and heard in the theater. And so Lee, E.J. Ballantyne shouted across the room, "Hey, Lee, get over here. We need a big Texas drunk." And Lee came over and he got the part. And then he sobered up the next day and thought, "Oh, hell, what did I just do?" And E.J. Ballantyne's sister-in-law, whose first name I don't remember, but she was a sweetheart. I got to talk to her as well. She stayed up with Lee all day and night before they went into production and taught him, or tried to teach him, the lines. And she told me, it's impossible. You can't teach somebody all the dialogue in the entire play in like one day and a night. So he did the best he could. And I love this story that when he made his entrance, his character made his entrance, as he took the stage, it was an amphitheater, I believe. And as he took the stage, there was this East Coast, dry storm, and there was a thunder crack, okay, and lightning, and it illuminated him from the back. And, he was 6'3.5", and, looked like Lee Marvin. And as David Ballantyne's sister-in-law said to me, Lee was the kind of a man that when he entered the room, you damn well paid attention to him. He had that kind of persona. And to have that thundercrack and lightning happen as he took the stage and then said his lines, or ad-libbed as best he could, that did it for him. He very next day, he quit his job as a plumber.
Bar was born. There he was.
Yep.
I have my notes here. It says his dad was drinking pals with John Barrymore.
No, E.J. Ballantyne was.
Oh, that's dude. He was drinking. So they did partay. They were big time partayers.
You bet.
He moves to New York City. What I loved about it was his pal who had to move was Me Up Scotty, James Doohan.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he was a great interview. Not so much.
You met him. I love him.
Oh, yeah. We met at the Beverly Hills Hotel because he was in town for a Star Trek reunion. And this was great. We spoke about Lee, and he had to be somewhere. So we had a limited amount of time, and his wife called while we were in the bar having lunch. And I was so proud of this. It wasn't on my bucket list, but it certainly became a bucket list event when his wife called and said, she has to cancel. She's not feeling well. He put the phone down, came back to the table, and he went, let's have some scotch. And we started doing shooters, and it was great.
I would have loved that. How much fun did you have?
Oh, man.
Did you get into any scoops about Captain Kirk? Did he Kirk?
He hated him.
Everybody did, right?
I don't know if I'm allowed to use certain language on this show. Can I? Or if not, I can.
I don't think there's a problem. No, I don't think so.
Okay. His favorite word for William Shatner was cocksucker. He constantly called him that. And the drunker he got, the more he said it. And then, because like I said, he was in town for a Star Trek reunion, I watched the show he had done. And he was, and they all came on stage, all the cast members. And he had the bad fortune of standing next to William Shatner. And I teased him about it when I called him the next day or so. I was like, wow, they really tortured you, didn't they? But you look like you were having a good time. And he says to me, you know what? That's called great acting, my son.
They all had to do that. Well, I don't know. I don't know if George Takei could. But, he's still kicking that William Shatner. He's still hanging in there.
Yeah, well, the devil takes care of his own.
Yeah, being a feces could maybe adds to his life. His lifeline.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Being a poop could sometimes add to someone's lifeline. He sort of seems like a devil-may-care fellow.
Well, you know what they say, only the good die young.
Ain't that the truth? And that's true. I hate to say that, but it's true.
Yep.
So
in some instances, yeah.
He convinces our Scotty, our James Doohan, convinces him to move to the city, New York City, try the theater.
Oh, well, no, he was already, it went like this. Once he quit his job as a plumber, under the GI Bill, he applied. His father asked him to go into the city and apply for, I think he wanted him to be like to lay tile or be a bricklayer or some kind of manual laborer. Mm-hmm. And he did apply for the GI Bill, and his father didn't know he did this, he used it to apply to the American Theater Workshop, which, by the way, still exists. And he enrolled in classes, and his father wasn't happy about it at all. And he had gotten an apartment in New York, and he studied. And while he was there, James Doohan would meet, he met him in a bar. What a surprise. And and they spoke, and he was getting some work. He was one of the things the American Theater Guild, that's what it was called, excuse me. One of the things that they did was not just train actors to act, not like the group theater or any of the other schools. What they did was they trained them to act as well, but mostly they trained them on how to get an agent, how to get a job, mm-hmm. what to do during auditions, things like that, which really is probably the most important thing you can learn if you wanted to be a professional actor. And so Lee was getting work. He was getting some live work in television. He was getting work in military training films and a lot of stage work. And he actually made it to Broadway in a production of Billy Budd, the original production. But he had a very small part, just basically said, yes, sir, no, sir, aye, sir. And that's when he met James Doohan. And Marvin was getting a little frustrated with the lack of work he was able to get, but he got work. And James Doohan advised him. He said, Lee, do yourself a favor. Move to California. Go to Hollywood. You can get a hell of a lot more work. Believe me, they need more villains, and you can play a heavy like nobody's business. So go to Hollywood. So he took his advice, and he went to Hollywood. And he met his agent, his lifelong career-long agent, a gentleman named Meyer Mishkin, whom I interviewed at length. And it was fate. It was meant to be.
And it's just something how you meet somebody like James Doohan, go here, do this, and it just hits. It's like just meeting him. But he did go to the actor's studio. I love that story you wrote.
Right. Yeah, I used to open the book because, everybody loves an underdog. And when you create a story, and I got this story from a guy who had interviewed him, that he didn't audition. What he did was he audited the class. And in order to do that, he had to do a scene. and he did a scene from The Snows of Kilimanjaro, the Ernest Hemingway play, a story. Excuse me, it was a short story, which they later made into a 2-hour movie. God knows how. But anyway, he did the scene where the character, the main character, is dying of gangrene, and when he did the scene, the guy in charge that day was Lee Strasberg. There were basically 2 or 3 people who ran the actor's studio, and they rotated. And Elia Kazan was one, and I think Stella Adler was another, and Lee Strasberg. And once he did the scene, Lee Strasberg criticized the scene. He gave him notes, whatever you want to call it. And everybody in the class always, they cited Lee Strasberg because he was the guru. And one of the things he criticized was the fact that he didn't get a sense of the character being in any pain, and you should have shown more pain. To which Lee said, "You know what? I was in the war. I saw people dying of gangrene. And when you're at the end, there's no pain at all, because all the wherever the gangrene is hit, whether it be in your arm, in your leg, chest, whatever it is, the nerve endings are dead, and you're not feeling anything." And believe me, I knew that. I saw a lot of dying men in the war. And to which Lee Strasberg said, well, he said something about how, don't disagree with me in my classroom. He took that attitude. To which, before he could finish, Lee Marvin threw the script in the air, walked out, and just said, "Fuck you," and walked out.
My kind of guy.
Right? How do you not love a guy who does something like that? Especially when he's right.
So pretentious. I know people, right. It was in my neighborhood. I live in the city, and it was 46th Street between 9th and 10th. And it's not like it was. I don't know. But the pretension of it, and I'll tell you, those who can act and those who can't teach. And he did.
Yeah, right.
Did you ever see it? It was like the Cassandra Crossing, and he was in it, and Lee Strasberg, I'm talking about everybody. He stunk. Mr. Wonderful and critiquing everybody. That's just my opinion.
Well, I'll tell you. No, I agree with that. I never saw the Cassandra Crossing, even though I'm a huge Burt Lancaster fan. But I'll tell you something. He can be very, very good. He didn't act very often, but when he did, I know he was very tight with Al Pacino. And Pacino made sure he got cast in Justice for All as his father. And he was incredible in Godfather 2.
Oh, I never saw Godfather 2.
Oh, you're missing out, man. That whole movie, everybody in it was incredible. And especially Lee Strasberg.
You got to check it out. Sorry, Lee. Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
I saw you in the Cassandra Crossing. You stunk.
Also Going in Style with Art Carney and George Burns. He was terrific in that, too.
That's the only thing I saw him in. I just kind of found it funny that he was so bad in it. Just my opinion, but I have to.
No, that's okay. It was probably closer to the end of his life, and he probably didn't give a shit anymore.
He was an overactor in it. That was it. It was just kind of overacting. It's not that he was terrible, but he wasn't great. So he moves to LA.
Yep.
And he starts getting work, and he meets Betty, right? The same year he moves to LA.
Right. Yep.
Betty's his first wife, everybody.
Yeah. Lee was married twice to Betty Marvin, and later in life he married a woman named Pam Feely, whom he had met when he was in Woodstock. And in between the two, he had a very notorious affair with Michelle Triola.
We have to talk about
when she legally changed her name to Marvin. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back. He was like, no,
Well, she's a trip. Your book just kind of paints not a lovely portrait of Michelle, that's for sure.
Well, I got that from the people I spoke to.
I believe it. She just kind of made me ill. But he did Dragnet, and then he did, what films did he get first? Just like teeny weeny parts? That's an interesting story in and of itself. That's how Meyer Mishkin became his agent. While he was still in New York, he was in a movie. He was cast in a movie called
it had alternate titles. It was You're in the Navy Now or the USS Tea Kettle. And it was based on a true story. It's a service comedy, and it starred Gary Cooper about a steam run engine. It didn't run on any kind of fuel or gas or coal, anything like that. It was all steam. And anyway, he auditioned and he got a non-speaking role. He was just in the background as a sailor. And by the way, it was also the first film of Charles Bronson. And I believe Jack Warden and a few others. And anyway, while he was on set, they filmed it partially in New York, and then they moved the cast to the production to Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And that's when he met Meyer Mishkin. The director was, gosh darn it, not Howard Hawks. He was I don't remember his name. I'm sorry, but anyway. He had been friends with Meyer Mishkin. In fact, Meyer Mishkin had been this director's casting director. That's how he got into the business. And the director called Meyer Mishkin to the set to see some of the actors, see if he would represent them. By the way, he did also represent Charles Bronson early in his career. He saw him in a few scenes. And then he asked him to represent Lee. And Lee wasn't around that day. And they had to send somebody out to find him. He was taking a 10-minute break to have a cigarette. But when he came back to the set, he acted, faked acted that he was upset. And he told the assembled, geez, can't I take a crap on my own time? And then the director asked Meyer Mishkin to represent him. And Meyer, being rather cagey, said, I don't represent anybody unless I know they can act. Let me hear him do a few lines. And so the director gave him a few lines in the film. And right after he did the scene, Meyer Mishkin said, how would you like to be represented by me? I could be your agent. What do you think? To which Lee said, you know what? I didn't have a fucking thing to say in this movie until you showed up. Buddy, I'm with you. And so be it. It started there. And Meyer had a plan for Lee. He knew he wasn't going to get him big roles right away. He had to work his face up to the studio execs, and he would have Lee accompany him when he would go to meetings and what have you, and have him give him a gift like an ashtray or a bottle of something or this, that, or the other, so they can get used to his face. And it actually worked. He started getting roles. He started, small roles, but over time it got bigger and bigger, but not right away. It took a while until, and I find it interesting that even he had talked, Meyer Mishkin had talked Lee Marvin into doing a TV series because he said, people might know your face and they might know your name, but they're not going to put the two together until they see you on a weekly basis. So he begrudgingly agreed to do M Squad, which was a fairly successful show. But at the time, and oftentimes when somebody wanted to take Meyer Mishkin's job away from him and say, Lee, how would you like to have us represent you? Lee would always say the same thing. He would say, sounds great, ask Meyer. But when he was working on M Squad at MCA, for MCA, which later merged with Universal, I believe. But anyway, he was approached, and he was getting very frustrated having to do television. So he, for a very short time, I think for like 6 months, maybe a year, he signed with MCA. And he very much regretted it because it didn't get him out of the TV series, and they weren't getting him any film work. He was
very vocal about it.
Oh, yeah.
At that time, that's not really, now actors do it after a year. They get too big for their britches and then they split. But at that time, he really was verbal that he didn't want to be on TV, that he didn't like the medium.
Right. Well, yeah. And he said so. He said, it's way too rushed. It's way too fast. We don't have time to, delve into a character. And it's really just a matter of sell the product. In those days, they had, TV had sponsors, obviously. And it was often just one sponsor that would cover the cost of the show. And in his case, it was the cigarette company that made Pall Mall. And one of the things the sponsors liked about Lee was, hey, this kid can really smoke a cigarette. And that was a plus.
A day, right? Wasn't he like a 5 or 6 pack a day smoker?
His whole life.
Ugh.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So was The Big Heat his sort of first big role? Bad guy?
Well, there were several. First of all, in the 1950s, he had really shown himself to be impressive in some of the biggest hits of the decade. The Caine Mutiny with Humphrey Bogart, The Wild One with Marlon Brando. And in my opinion, he stole that movie. He was great. Bad Day at Black Rock with Spencer Tracy. Raintree County with Montgomery Clift. With, really, really solid, great performances. And one of them, a standout, was a movie that wasn't necessarily that big a hit, but it gained a kind of a cult following, a Randolph Scott Western called 7 Men from Now. And he impressed the hell out of everybody in that movie. And one of my favorite stories about that movie was that, as is the way of Westerns, there is a shootout at the end of the film between Marvin and Randolph Scott. By the way, Randolph Scott, who co-produced the movie along with John Wayne, saw Lee's earliest scenes, and he told the director, Bud Bediger, this kid's pretty good. Let's give him some more lyrics, which is his way of saying, let's give him some more lines. And when they got to the gunfight at the end of the movie, I got to interview the director, Bud Bediger. And Bud Bediger said, we previewed the movie, I think he said at the Pantages in Hollywood. And when we previewed it and they did the shootout at the end of the film, Lee Marvin, playing the bad guy, of course, dies. And one of the things he does as he gets shot is he stares in disbelief at his hands, as if his hands have failed him, because throughout the movie, he's been boasting and practicing his fast draw. And then he, like I said, he stares at his hands and then he just collapses on the desert floor. Well, the audience loved it so much, and I'm not making this up, but Bediger said, everybody in the audience started screaming, show it again, show it again. And they reran his death scene.
He knew how to die.
And that's another good point, too. He made a movie called 8 Men Out. 8 Iron Men. That was it. 8 Iron Men, which, by the way, coincidentally, was originally titled The Dirty Dozen, strangely enough. But anyway, it was called 8 Iron Men. And the director, Edward Dmytryk, whom I interviewed, said that because Lee had been in the service, he was able to teach the cast things that nobody else would know unless they had been in the service. And he said, for example, how to die in a scene. He said, when somebody gets killed, or shot, they're not going to do these grandiose pirouettes into the air and then come down stiff as a board like you see in movies. Now, you keep in mind, Edward Dmytryk had already directed several really great film noirs, like Farewell, My Lovely, and Kiss Me Deadly. Not Kiss Me Deadly, I'm sorry. Anyway, the one with Dick Powell, and the name escapes me right now. Murder My Sweet, that's what it's called. Anyway.
Love that movie. It's a great movie.
Yeah, you talk about changing Dick Powell's career, right? He told Dmytryk and other cast members in a given scene, he would say, when you get shot, when you get killed, life just goes out of you. That's it. You're gone. You're dead. You just fall to the ground and collapse. And he also told them that because they were playing dog faces, he said, if you want to make your uniform look more stressed because you've been in the field, take the collar of your shirt or your jacket, whatever, and brush it with either steel wool or a wire brush. Because of the beard you have, that's what's going to look the worst. It's going to affect the way you look and dress. I mean, things like that that's the kind of oh, and on the same movie there was a German, I think it was like a German version of a howitzer, like a really, really big, like almost like a cannon. And it was very important to the story. And it broke down. And all the prop men couldn't fix it. They tried. Lee said, give me about 20 minutes. I'll get it working. And he did. His know-how for stuff like that was amazing.
He was a good plumber, too, I heard.
Yeah, right.
Plumber. Because I think the first time I really got a sense of him being this, powerful bad guy was The Big Heat. I thought he was amazing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's another one. Another example.
Amazing.
Another film from the 50s. And thank you for reminding me of that one. And he was so impressive as a bad guy that the the critic for the New York Times, Vincent Canby, dubbed him the Merchant of Menace, which I thought was a nice play on words.
Oh, he was. He was terrible. And poor Gloria Graham.
Yeah, right?
Scene. That's horrifying. I just love that movie. And Fritz Lang liked him very much, but he could not stand Glenn Ford. That is a tidbit from your book.
Yeah, and it's funny. The director was Fritz Lang, the German emigre, who was famous for his eye patch, like John Ford. But he said, I love this story. I don't remember who told me this, so forgive me. But apparently, I know who told me. It was Lee Marvin in an interview talking about The Big Heat. And he was just, having a conversation with Fritz Lang between scenes. And he asked him, he said, Mr. Lang, how am I doing? And he says, you are doing great. I have no problems with you. You're wonderful. And then he pointed across the soundstage to Glenn Ford and he went, that is my problem. I cannot deal with him, or something to that effect. And Lee Marvin just loved the fact that, hey, Fritz Lang likes me, so that's cool. And so he messed with Fritz Lang in a playful way. Early on the movie set, he was smoking a cigar, Lee, and he put his feet up on the table in front of him, and he went, because Fritz Lang was talking about some of the other movies he had made, like M, which is an incredible film.
Amazing, yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, and some other films. And as he's talking about those films, Lee puts his feet up on the table, takes a big draw on the cigar, and very theatrically goes, yeah, that's great, Fritz, but what the hell have you done lately? You gotta love a guy like that.
I like those kind of guys. I like guys like Lee Marvin because they're down to earth. They're drunkards. Way. I don't know if I'm not saying it in a good way. I mean, he was a rough and tumble. He was a character, and he was something else. He was a one in a million. He was very unique, and that's. And I thought he was really cute. Between you, me, and the lamppost.
Hey, let me tell you something. You're not the only one. There are people. I mean, he grew into his face because when he was younger, he was not only kind of horse-faced, he was kind of gangly. But as he got older and his face filled out more and he got that great head of white hair, I know a guy who told me that his mother had seen him in some fancy restaurant in Hollywood. And she said about seeing Lee Marvin, he came in wearing, jeans and a crisp white T-shirt and a blue blazer. And she said, I had never seen anybody dressed like that before. And he just looked so handsome. And I'm not surprised she felt that way.
I swoon at that. That's my look. I love jeans, T-shirt, and a blazer. To me, that is like hubba, big time. Some people love a man in uniform, love a man in suit. I love a man dressed like Lee Marvin. Hubba.
Right on.
Hubba. Big time.
By the way, I just remembered the name of the director from USS Kettle, Henry Hathaway, whom, by the way, he saw many, many years later. And, he was responsible for Lee Marvin's career, for getting him started. And many years later, he saw him at a film festival. And it was interesting the way it happened, and that Lee Marvin was giving an interview. And Henry Hathaway snuck up behind him, and he went, still talking when you should be listening, huh, Marvin? And Lee Marvin loved it. And they turned around and they hugged, and it was great.
I want to talk briefly about the Wild One. He got along with Marlon Brando okay. He said he was almost childlike, Marlon Brando.
Yeah, and for some reason, there had been this weird cult rumor that they hated each other and they didn't get along, and that, what you call it, and Stanley Kramer, who produced it, and I interviewed, he said the same thing. He said, well, there was a passing acknowledgement. And the truth is, according to Betty, who was married to him at the time, they got along great. She said Marlon would come visit them during the making of the movie. He taught her how to play the bongos. And they went to work together in the morning.
I love bongos. Go, Marlon, go.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else. They knew each other so well that they could play this game, wherein when they first met, when they got on the set, Marlon Brando and Lee Marvin were in some place where they could have a drink. I don't remember where it was. And Marlon Brando said to, Lee Marvin said to Marlon Brando, I'm thinking of changing my name. I'm thinking of calling myself Marlo Brandy. To which Marlon Brando said, I'm thinking of changing my name to Lee Moron. Now, consequently, those stories circulated, but it always seemed that, because they circulated, they didn't get along. That's not true. They did get along. They just were, rivals and competitive and friends.
I love this story. Bikers would hang out in front of Lee's house after the Wild One. Him and Betty.
Right.
That's creepy.
Yeah, freaked him out. And by the way,
holy crap.
There are a lot of people, especially when the film first came out, that now I know Marlon Brando, his character, Johnny Strebler, a lot of people thought it was not a very good performance, even though it was one of Brando's earliest films, that he was, too, with the leather jacket and the peaked cap and the attitude, hey, Johnny, what are you rebelling against? What do you got? Right?
I love that.
And yeah, things like that. However,
your friend, I love him. Your friend.
Oh, Burt Kearns?
I love Burt. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he's a hell of a nice guy.
Love that book. Yeah.
I love him too. And we did a podcast together, very similar to what we're doing now. And then we wound up doing a book signing about the same subject. And it was this: were Brando and Marvin's characters gay lovers? Now, it was Bert's idea. And when he told me that, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Really? And he said, yeah, let's do it. And we debated, and he gave himself a couple of drop the mic moments, which he'd play lines of dialogue from the film. And the one that Lee Marvin has, Johnny, I love you. We all love you. All the Beatles love you. And when he did that, he just went, I rest my case. And I was like, that's just the way these guys talk to each other. Don't be so literal.
I didn't get that vibe at all. I really did.
Neither did I. And by the way, there's a line in the movie when they have that conversation where basically he's giving Brando a hard time. And one of the characters in the film even says to Mary Murphy, who Brando has the hot for, he turns to Mary Murphy and he goes, Chino's giving your boyfriend the needle and he don't like it one bit. So, that's basically what he's doing. He's just really sticking it to him, so to speak.
And Bert says, aha, see? I told him.
Right, yeah, that's right. Oh, and by the way, interesting thing about that movie, too, was that, and I had a problem with my editor, editor and publisher, same guy, that apparently the character that Lee Marvin plays, Chino, was, he was part of the same biker group as Marlon Brando, the BRMC, Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. But he splintered off and formed his own group, and they were called the Beatles. Okay? Now, apparently, I have it on authority that George Harrison said, because I had read this, that George Harrison said that John Lennon was a big fan of that movie, and that's why he named the band the Beatles. Now, Yoko Ono apparently disagreed with that. and something that either she had written or been interviewed about, and she said that's simply not true. That movie wasn't even shown in England when it first came out. That's actually the fact. However, it was shown kind of, what's the word, underground in England.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, they were shown in places illegally because it was banned in England. It wasn't allowed to be seen.
Legal contraband.
Right? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that movie is nothing when you look at it. It's like, geez.
Oh, but at the time, it was huge. And Bert Kearns did a great job in talking about the history of how factual that movie was.
Oh, I love his book. It was wonderful. Bert is he knew his stuff. I absolutely recommended Bert.
You bet.
Well, he was amazing.
It all started in the pre-war years, and after World War II. The guys had to burn off their steam somehow, and so they formed biker groups. And what happened in a town called Hollister in upstate California is what the movie is based on. It was kind of like rioting in the streets when these guys got together. Yeah.
Also, you see Marlon Brando's outfit and his like cap is tilted like those guys had it. Very jaunty, not really, not slobby, like here I am, vroom, vroom.
Right, and that's another thing. I'm glad you mentioned that because in the movie, and this is what I was going to say a moment ago, in the movie, the reason why the bikers hung out at Lee Marvin's house after the movie came out was because Marvin's character looked like the real bikers. They didn't look like they were something,
neat and clean, pretty boys, kind of.
Right, exactly. They weren't posers. And there was a famous photo in Life magazine after, it was in the late 40s, after the Hollister riot, of a big fat slob on a motorcycle with his leg up on the handlebars, right? And there's a scene in the movie where Lee Marvin looks exactly like that guy, except he's not fat.
Yeah, I like that movie very much, and he did a good job. He was he was funny, and he did.
He was great. He stole everything he was in. When they arrest him, and he goes, "Oh, the shame of it all. Call my old lady. Tell her I'm in the can." He was great in that. He had so much fun.
It was cute. He did so many in the 50s. Rain Tree.
Yep.
He liked Rod Taylor. That's the film that Montgomery Clift had a car accident. And he was really good friends with Rod. I read this really good book about Montgomery Clift. And on this, you said Lee didn't socialize because Montgomery Clift would like throw mashed potatoes. I read that, mashed potatoes at people. And
you read that in my book because Rod Taylor told me that. He said he admired Montgomery Clift's acting. He thought he was a hell of an actor, but he said he didn't socialize with him, and he goes, I did, and consequently, I'm the guy who got mashed potatoes thrown in his face and in his hair.
He was a trip, but there was another book written about Montgomery Clift and Elizabeth Taylor, and that's after. He would eat some food at a restaurant with his feet.
Oh, his feet. I thought you were going to say his bare hands.
Feet! Oh, my God. That's skill. He must have long toes.
I got to tell you, I'm a huge Montgomery Clift fan.
Me too.
I thought he was so incredible, especially, before the accident. Mm-hmm. But after the accident, you got to see Judgment at Nuremberg. It's a powerful.
Oh, I love that movie. I've seen it.
Incredible in it. But before that, I mean, one of the greatest film performances in the history of American motion pictures was his performance in From Here to Eternity. Just amazing.
Oh, he
absolutely
was so
amazing.
Good.
I like, because I'm not wordy enough to come up with better terms for it. Somebody like that in that movie, I call spooky good. I mean, his performance gives you goosebumps. After Sinatra's character dies and he's playing the bugle, oh my God, it gets me every time.
Dwayne, did you ever hear? I love this spooky good that there is a story that he haunts about Hollywood hauntings, that he haunts this hotel and he plays a bugle.
No, I've never heard that.
Yes.
Really?
It's a riot, but they said they see him and they hear him playing the bugle in this hallway at this hotel. I don't know. I guess they stayed there or something.
Oh, you know what? That sounds slightly familiar. I think I remember hearing that somewhere before, but it's been a long, long time. Yeah, that's pretty trippy. It's true.
So we're good there. He was very frustrated that he was not a leading man.
Was Marvin?
Yeah.
Oh, well, to a point. See, as James Doohan had told him, go to Hollywood. You could always get work as a villain. And he did. And I think after a while, because he was playing, well, not just that he was playing villains, but he was just not given, how can I put this? He wasn't put in the same category as some of the other major actors at the time, like, Rock Hudson and Tony Curtis, John Derek.
Pretty boys, yeah.
Yeah, comparatively. And he knew that. He wasn't crazy about it, but he knew it. But he also knew he could get work. But after a while, it was kind of like, especially around M Squad, which is when he got very frustrated, where he wanted to do more and do better. And he also had this philosophy about his work that he didn't believe most action films or violence in films was believable. He said, I think it was in a Playboy interview, he said that, how when you see a barroom fight and two guys are punching it out and then one has a little trickle of blood in the corner of his mouth and then they shake hands and go have a beer together. He goes, I hate that. That's not believable and it's not real. And then he cited the example of a really good action scene was Humphrey Bogart in Treasure Sierra Madre, when he gets in a barroom fight. And, that kind of thing. Now, interestingly enough, he was in a movie with John Wayne where Lee Marvin did exactly that. They got in a friendly fight. It was a John Ford film. They get in a friendly fight. They beat the crap out of each other, and then they go get drunk together. But it wasn't, anything he wanted to do. It was the way it was written and directed. But once he had the chance, and probably the first chance he had to show his ability and dislike for violence in life and action films, was in the movie The Killers, which was made for television. But at the time, it was a remake, by the way. At the time that it was being made and when it was finished, John F. Kennedy had just been assassinated. So it was considered too violent for television. It was going to be the very first TV movie. But it was withdrawn from broadcast, and it was shown in theaters instead, for which he won a British Academy Award. And he's really great at it.
He is. He just such a good bad guy. He really is. And like you say, he has such a presence. You notice.
Yeah, and the thing about The Killers was, by definition, I guess his character was a bad guy, but you still want to, cheer him on. He's a classic anti-hero. He's a paid killer. He and Clu Gulager, they're partners, and they get paid to shoot and kill John Cassavetes, excuse me, who's waiting for them, like in the original film with Burt Lancaster. And it starts eating away at Lee Marvin. It's like, what man is expecting to be killed or wants to die? And he has to find out. And so that's what the movie is. It shows them coming in contact with everybody involved and putting the contract out on John Cassavetes. And that includes Angie Dickinson and Ronald Reagan in his last film.
He couldn't stand. I know. I love that.
Yeah.
You're right that he got along with the majority of the people we worked for, but he really could not stand Ronald Reagan.
Yeah. And Meyer Mishkin told me that too. I asked Meyer, I said, was there anybody that Lee didn't like working with? And he said, no, he got along with everybody. And then he waited a beat and he went, probably Ronnie Reagan. He didn't like Reagan. And he one time famously said in an interview, a TV Guide, such a bizarre statement. He said, when the work dries up, I'm going to, I'm going to tear up my SAG card, dip it in Ronnie Reagan's blood, and then go to Hawaii and paint for a living. Really? Dip it in Ronald Reagan's blood? What the hell?
Yeah. I love this one, the story about Ward Bond. And he hated commies, wanted USA to attack Russia. And then Lee asked him what war he fought in. Mr.
Right.
Tough Guy, right?
Yeah, the only war you ever fought was on the back lot of Universal Studios.
You know what? That guy, I've only heard bad things about Ward Bond. He is just not.
Well, he was a wonderful character actor.
He was, but
and Wagon Train, you know.
He was. He, you know, he was perfect for that kind of stuff. But
right.
I hate when people are like gung ho war, and yet they've not been there. And to me, it's like, you know, like he said, what war have you been in? He has no clue. Send your kids.
And, you know,
everybody.
One of my favorite examples of that, and they were very good friends, by the way, was the fact that, and I'm a fan of some of this guy's films, but John Wayne had a reputation for movies like The Sands of Iwo Jima, Flying Leathernecks,
yes,
and all these gung-ho, you know, rah-rah movies. He never was in the service in his life. Not one day.
That's it with me, Dwayne, because I didn't know. I'm like, I remember as a kid, they're like, you know, they put him on TV Guide. Yes, TV Guide. Great American hero, this, that.
Yeah.
I read that the guy was never in a war. He was always talking about the sissies who didn't go to the Vietnam War. And Mr. Tom,
right.
I was shocked. And I don't know, that kind of turns my stomach when you're Mr. Gung-Ho War. And why is he a hero? Because he played one on in a movie? That's
pretty much, yeah. And it's so funny. Recently, somebody on social media, might have been Facebook or where, but fairly recently, like a year or two ago, they were shocked when a bunch of people reacted negatively to the fact that he'd said some things in a Playboy interview he did, John Wayne, where about how, you know, his dislike of Native Americans, his dislike of women. The thing he said about Native Americans, I remember distinctly. He said,
"Oh, I read that recently."
He said, "Yeah, sure, they have a right to an education, but they've got to earn that right." And I'm thinking, they were here before you. What the hell? They have to earn that right? Screw
that was
you,
a Sasheen little feather. Remember that? And they said he had to hold John Wayne back.
Yeah, that's what the rumor was.
Yeah, Mr. Tough Guy with a little lady on the stage. So, I mean, he's not my cup of tea. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, but then again, you got to see movies like Red River. He was great in that.
He was very good in Red River.
And I always thought he should have played more villains because his presence is pretty overpowering. But obviously, he didn't like playing villains. The closest he came would be Red River. And, you know, in movies like True Grit, The Cowboys, he was really worth watching. That's for sure.
What was it? The Three Godfathers.
Oh, yeah. There's another good one.
Yeah. So, Lee, was he boozing heavily through all of his acting roles in Hollywood, or did it start later, like the 60s? But in the 50s, he's boozing like he boozed?
Let me put it this way. When he was in high school, when he was in Florida, he went to the I can't believe it. I just went blank on the name of the school he was in. It was a school run by the Brothers of St. Benedict. It was a Catholic school, a boarding school, prep school, however you want to call it. And he made homemade hooch. He because it was Florida, he used fermented grapefruit, and he sold it to the other students, and he made some bucks. And of course, he indulged himself. So it goes that far back, and his whole life, he never really quit. He did try when he was married to Betty. Apparently, she got him into AA for a while. He went to a psychiatrist for a while. And of course, it never really, dealt with, well, he also went cold turkey for a while too, but it never miserable. Really, it never really dealt with, the core problem. And Betty got very disappointed when Lee's mother died in the early 60s, and they went to the funeral, and on the plane ride back, he ordered like 3 or 4 martinis on the plane after he had been dry for a couple of months. And Betty went, "What are you doing?" And Lee just said, "Well, the bitch is dead now, isn't she?" And he toasted himself and drank all those martinis.
Betty is something else. I would recommend anybody, if you can find Betty's book. She was dead. You didn't get to interview Betty, right?
Oh, I did.
Oh, you did. Actually, I love her.
Oh, she was a trip and a half. I'm not making this up. We actually got stoned together. which was a trip.
She
rolled a joint and we smoked it.
I read her book and I'm like, oh man, this is a woman I would love to have lunch with, like a 4-bottle of wine lunch. And
yeah, she was that kind of a trippy lady. She was. And you can see what Lee loved about her, because she didn't pull any punches. He would introduce her to people by saying, I'd like you to meet my best friend and toughest critic. Yeah, she was great. I spent a lot of time with her, and it was wonderful to do so.
She was I just loved her book. It was like you're sitting there with a friend, and I'm reading the book. I love this book. I want to have lunch with her. I want to get drunk with her.
It was so funny. Barbara, my girlfriend, and I became very good friends with Betty. We'd drive up to Santa Barbara, spend the day with her. And when she had her book signing, when the book first came out, we went to it. And there was a handful of celebrities there who were friends with her. I mean, really good friends. And one of them was Tab Hunter. And she told me, and I love that she described him this way, that Tab Hunter was probably the most masculine, macho, gay man she ever knew. And when you meet him, he was. Super nice guy.
I love him. I love the fact they wanted him to marry someone that, do the lavender marriage. And he came out later in life and he had a partner for years and years. And he was so handsome.
Yeah, he was. He was a good looking guy. He had a long-term affair with, I believe, Anthony Perkins.
Yes. Did you hear the story where Anthony Perkins, it was a story about a baseball player. I don't remember the name of it, who had mental illness.
Oh, Jim Pearsall.
Yes. And
Fear Strikes Out.
Yes.
Great movie.
They wanted Tab to play the part. It was in the apartment or house he was in. Tony got that, and he ended up getting the role. And how horribly miscast, and how horrible. Shame. Imagine that one.
Yeah. I think I had heard that story too.
Yeah.
And also, it was, from what I understand, there was a documentary made called Tab Hunter Confidential. Mm-hmm. And I watched it, and it was really pretty good. Yeah. And part of it, and he was involved in the documentary. And part of it, he talks about how Anthony Perkins just up and left. No explanation, no reason. And they had a long-term relationship, and he just walked away from it. And very, very strange.
It was, and I've posted pictures, and everybody, I will post more pictures on my Facebook with Anthony Perkins and Tab Hunter double dating with like Natalie Wood and somebody else. And the guys are like intertwined, and the body language is amazing. How sad is it? You know what I mean? It's like, boy, oh boy. But let's get back to Betty. And he got drunk all the time. He cheated on her quite frequently. One night stands, probably drunken kind of one night stand kind of deals. Yeah, well, that's what Betty said. That he'd call her from God knows where and go, "Can you guess where I am?" And he'd be in bed with somebody else. The other thing about Lee's drinking, I'd like to say this, in that in the beginning, when he started making movies, in the beginning, he decided one of the best ways to avoid getting in trouble is to get drunk with somebody else. So if we get caught or we get busted, we both get balled out. And he would do that. And sometimes he very rarely drank on the job, but sometimes he couldn't help it. And one of my favorite stories is when he was making Cap Ballou. He didn't think he was supposed to come to work that day. And he wasn't on the call sheet. But the director, Elliot Silverstein, who told me this story, he had decided to change the schedule of the shooting. And he forgot to tell Lee. And Lee was out getting completely shit-faced. But he had to show up. And he did. And it was the scene in the movie that they were shooting wherein Lee was supposed to, hunt down his brother in the brothel, going from door to door, right? And he finally finds him. And in that scene, Lee is unable to do it. He's stumbling around. He's falling. And so the director, Elliot Silverstein, got the idea of using a metronome. You know what a metronome is, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And he set it for the footsteps.
Lee was supposed to take. And that worked. And they were able to get the shot, at least long enough to get the shot. And then, he wasn't needed anymore. He also made a TV movie, and I will find this out. He did another TV movie called The Trial of Sergeant Riker. And it's a very good story. And in any event, there's a trial, and he's Sergeant Riker. And the director told me that Buzz Kulick said he made Lee promise never to go and get drunk anywhere. You got to promise me not to leave the studio because I don't want to see you at the bar across the street getting shit-faced. And Lee said, you got it, pal. Okay. Well, they were doing a shot, and Lee had up and disappeared, and they didn't know where he went. Turns out he had gone to the set of one of the Westerns they were shooting at Universal, and they were all passing a bottle on the set. And Lee joined them, and he got drunk. And then he told me, Buzz Kulick told me that we still needed him that day. So we kind of shot around him with no scenes with him, with dialogue, but we needed him on the at the scene for close-ups or like a two-shot where he's at the defense table with his lawyers, and then he told me, he goes, I don't know if you can tell, but Lee was pretty drunk when we shot that scene. So I watched the movie again, and I wasn't aware what to look for. But when I watched it again, he is face down on the table. I mean, it looks like somebody knocked him out, and he's just face down. It's bizarre, and they used the shot anyway.
Wow.
So yeah, he drank. He tried not to drink on the job, and on occasion he did.
He came in hungover a lot, though.
I'm sorry?
He drank at night. He came in hungover, I bet you, a lot.
Oh, yeah, and that's the amazing thing about him. Sam Peckinpah even said that about him because he directed him on an episode of Route 66, that he could drink anybody under the table, but the next day he was always ready to go. He said, when they were shooting that episode of Route 66, Lee came in hungover. He drank way too much, and I think he probably had like an hour's sleep. And he was over in the corner throwing up, to which Sam Peckinpah said, wash his face and get him over here. He's fine. And he did the scene. It was also the show in which he got his nose broken. In the fight scene he did with Martin Milner, whom I interviewed.
Oh, I like Martin Milner. That was a good story with Martin Milner. I like that a lot.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I went to his house in San Diego, Carlsbad.
Adam, I don't know what it is about him, but, I've seen him, he's in Twilight Zone, different movies. I really just kind of like him. I don't know why I do, but I do. You liked him in person? You thought he was cool?
I'm sorry?
You liked him in person? You thought he was cool?
Oh, super nice guy. Super nice guy. I remember him mostly from Adam 12.
I don't remember Adam 12, but in the story, he broke Lee's nose, right? They got into a fight.
Right. Now they choreographed the fight like you always do, but Lee misstepped. When I asked him, is it true that you broke Lee's nose? And he said to me, let me ask you a question. How are you handling Lee's drinking? And I went, oh, okay, that answers the question. Lee got drunk and he misstepped and he walked right into a punch, period. And they rushed him to the hospital, and the doctor, this is the way Martin Milner explained it to me. The ER doctor walks into the room and he goes, he sees there's blood on my hand and he sees blood all over Lee's face and then says, okay, what happened here? It's like, you really need to have this explained to you? And anyway, they gave Lee a choice of either to, the type of medicine to give him would either ease the pain or ease the swelling. And knowing that he had to go back to California the next day or two to shoot The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, he chose to have the swelling go down. And he also thought he was going to get fired from that film because of the way, his nose was broken. But what they did, and if you watch The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, you can see it, they rearranged the shooting schedule. So the very first scene Lee Marvin's in, he's wearing a bandana across his face, so you can't see his nose.
Oh, he's acting like he's a crook.
Oh yeah, and he is. He's
wow, very
yeah, his character is Liberty Valance.
It's really convenient. Which was first, Capaloo or what's the movie? Ship of Fools.
That's interesting. They were done the same year, and 1965, and I think Ship of Fools came out first, but that's only a scheduling thing. It just worked out that way.
And that's where he met
Michelle Triola. Yes,
and I love the story. He loved Vivian Lee, and he kept a shoe. How very Prince Charming.
Yeah, because that was the shoe she beat the hell out of him with. And he took it. And he took it like a pro, you know.
Michelle Triola.
Yeah, Michelle. She's in the movie. You can see her. She's an extra in the film.
I have to check it out. But
in the dining room scene, I interviewed a lady, a wonderful, wonderful woman named Barbara Luna, who was in the film. She was one of the flamenco dancers, and she took Michelle Triola in because Michelle Triola had no place to live. She was basically homeless, and she also got her a job as Barbara Luna's understudy. And she didn't realize at the time, anyway, that Lee Marvin and Michelle Triola were carrying on in her apartment, like right next door kind of deal. And she didn't find out until after the movie was done, and it became a little bit more well-known that they were an item.
And at that time, he went back and forth with Betty. He wasn't like,
right,
I'm dumping you, but I'm not dumping her. And
right. He thought, basically the old saying, he thought he could have his cake and eat it too. Yeah. And he was living on in his trailer on the studio lot, and they were separated. And when he got nominated for Capaloo for an Oscar, he invited Betty because she was his wife. But then when Michelle Triola found out he was taking Betty, Michelle Triola said, if you take her instead of me, I'm going to kill myself. This is the kind of melodramatic stuff she would do.
That's emotional blackmail and despicable, quite frankly. You know?
Right. And Betty told me one of my favorite stories. She said, when Lee told her I've got to take Michelle or she's going to kill herself, Betty said, let her do it. And then instead, what she decided to do, Betty, was she said, I was going to wear my rattiest clothes and dress up our kids in the rattiest clothes and have us outside the Pantages Theater or the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion and hold up a sign saying, we are Lee Marvin's family. And she said she was really going to do it, but she said her friend talked her out of it.
I don't know. I love the part where Lee's telling her, because he's hating that he cheated on her so much. He wanted her to have affairs so they were equal.
Right. Yeah. So she would, yeah. And so that way he wouldn't feel as much guilt. She also, when he finally admitted to the fact that he didn't want to get married, be married anymore, he called her into the bedroom. He was sitting on the bed. She was sitting on the bed. And he said, Betty, I just don't want to be married anymore. And to which Betty responded with, I wish you would have told me that 4 kids ago.
Well, you know, he was guilty, and I'm not going to blame Michelle Triola about being a skank, which I feel that she was not a good person, just from what I've read, not just your book, but from what I've heard about her.
And let me tell you something real quick about that. I got into arguments with people who don't understand the outcome of the palimony suit. She lost everything, okay? And it was a very sensationalized suit at the time. It was on the news every single day. It was new.
It was like the first of its kind.
It was the first of its kind. And that term came from her lawyer, Marvin Mitchelson, who called it alimony for a pal. But there are people who genuinely believe that he lost or he was at fault and what have you. That's not the case. And there are people, because I wrote this book, there are people who say they won't talk to me anymore because they know better. And I know for a fact that Lee lost that case and he deserved to lose. Okay, sorry, you're wrong. And his agent told me the best payoff of that story in that he was told to pay her, I think it was like $84,000 or $184,000 in retribution to allow her to get on her feet and learn a trade or something like that. And he was like, I'm fine with that. That's even less than I was paying her when we first broke up. So he was willing to do that. But then his lawyer, excuse me, whom I interviewed, said, hey, Lee, I would like to get that money back on appeal. And he said, no, I'm done with this, man. I just want to walk away. And then his lawyer said, David Kagan, whom I interviewed, David Kagan said, Lee, didn't you hate the way Mitchelson treated you in the courtroom? And then Lee went, okay, go for the appeal. And what happened was he didn't have to pay her. She wound up having to pay the court costs. And on the day that decision came down, you just can't make this kind of stuff up. On the day that decision came down, she was arrested in a Beverly Hills boutique for trying to steal some brassieres. Same day.
Oh, my. I also, in your book, it said she was blackmailing 5 other men.
Yep. And one of them, by the way, was Glenn Ford.
Well, he was something else. She
wasn't. Yeah, what she was doing, she wasn't necessarily blackmailing them, although in some cases I think she was. She was also a prostitute, and she would go to service these guys.
The whole thing with Michelle also was that she, that really hit because he was kind of scared of her. That it seemed that he said, well, you guys have to help me get away from her because she was in their beach house. And then
he thought she was going to kill him in his sleep.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have been shocked, but he left. Allegedly, right. He tried to get back with Betty, but then he marries his second wife.
Right.
Like that.
Which was a total surprise.
Yeah, Betty was like, he just asked me to marry him, get back together the night before. And then Triola, who changed her name to Marvin, I'm sure she was just livid. And, let's face it, nobody likes to be cheated on. Nobody likes to be left. Nobody likes that. But she just, and then she ended up with Dick Van Dyke, who ended up paying her the money.
Yeah, that's right. She had gotten a job in an agent's office as a secretary, and that agent represented Dick Van Dyke, who would come in and they started talking, dating, what have you, and they lived together. Yeah. You would think she would have learned her lesson.
Makes you wonder what?
That she would have learned her lesson. She moved in with Dick Van Dyke, and it's also kind of funny. When Lee Marvin heard about that, he said, boy, you'd think she would go with somebody better than a TV star and maybe go with a movie star like Clint Eastwood. And he was making fun of her, not Dick Van Dyke. But Dick Van Dyke took that personally. He got very angry over that in public, in public statements. It was about her and her status, not Dick Van Dyke.
She was a fame, she zoomed in on the most famous guys is what and he's still.
And by the way, look at Dick Van Dyke and look at Lee Marvin. Both long-faced, white-haired gentlemen.
Yeah. I always thought Dick Van Dyke was a cutie too when he was there, but he didn't have that kind of grrr, that Lee Marvin has in my eyes.
Right? Yeah. He was a different type.
He was more benign, but he was a good-looking guy. He was not an unattractive man. He got so let's push through here. We've got his Academy Award winning role. He was Mr. Thing.
Cat Ballou.
Right. And he played twins, right, in that movie?
Right. He played the drunken gunslinger, Kid Celine, and his evil twin brother, Tim Strong. And not only was it rare for a comedy performance to win an Oscar, but it's even rarer still when it's a comedy performance in which the actor can play 2 characters. And he pulled it off.
And he did well. And then was Paint Your Wagon next?
Oh, no. That was like 4 years later. and what's ironic about Paint Your Wagon, which I like, by the way, some people do, some people don't. But the thing about Paint Your Wagon was he turned down the Wild Bunch to make Paint Your Wagon.
Oh, yeah. That was a good story.
Yeah. And well, first of all, he got $1 million payday for Paint Your Wagon. So that helps. And it was 69. So it wasn't, like the kind of paydays you have today. Anyway.
But it was huge then, big time dough.
I'm sorry?
It was big time dough then, though.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And he read the script and he liked the script. He said that the character of Ben Rumson fits me like a glove. And he went on to play it. And I thought he played it very well. And I'll tell you something else. A lot of critics at the time said that if they'd have made the movie earlier, it would have been perfect for Walter Houston. And I think there was some truth in that. Although I thought Lee Marvin was very credible. And both he and Clint Eastwood did their own singing, for what it's worth.
They weren't Frank Sinatra, but, they did it.
Right. And the songs that they sang were more like character pieces.
Yeah.
They weren't songs, although Eastwood has a song called Elisa, which is kind of a love song. And, man, he hits a lot of sour notes on that song. But what are you going to do?
You look at him and you swoon, so nobody cared.
Right.
Your next, I think I really want everybody to read this book you did about the Dirty Dozen. And he really... Oh,
thank you.
It was very good. Because I think I just don't like war stuff. And I really didn't like the movie because they burned people alive. That really hit it for me. But the book was juicy and was really, really good. And Lee drank a hell of a lot when he did that flick.
Yep, he did. One of the guys in the movie, Bob Phillips, whom I met and told me great stories, he was hired to play the character of Corporal Morgan in the film. And he was also hired to do something else. And the guy who produced the film, Ken Hyman, who I interviewed, said that he hired Bob Phillips as well to be Lee Marvin's security. However, in the industry, there's a better term for what Bob Phillips had to do. He was Lee Marvin's babysitter. He had to make sure that Lee Marvin got to work sober. And he made a deal with Lee. He said, look, when we're done shooting for the day, I'll match you drink for drink, okay? But when we get to the set, you show up sober. And for the overwhelming majority of the making of the film, it's exactly what he did. But when Bob Phillips was done, he wasn't in the big finale. Lee drank.
They were real party hounds, but Lee was something else.
Oh yeah, there are some wonderful stories that I want to tell you about, but
you know what I'm going to do?
That Bob Phillips told me that are hysterical, but I'm not going to tell you because I want people to read the book.
Yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put out our interview with that book, which gives them a little teasers to it when I put this out as well. So we have
thank you.
Yeah, because I really enjoyed the book. Like I said, I hate war movies. I hate that kind of stuff, but the book was really, really good. I love the story about him. There was a reporter, a woman.
I know the story. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I know the story. It's also in the Lee Marvin biography. And my editor didn't want me to put it in because it's a little salacious, for lack of a better word. And he actually gave me a choice. I could either use that story or I can use another story that's rather salacious, make it one or the other, but you can't have both, especially not in the same chapter. And so I went with that story.
What was the other salacious one? Tell us.
You know what? Now that I think about it, I remember something. I got to use them both. I just didn't put them in the same chapter. Uh-huh. The other story, I just remembered that now. Yeah. The other story was that story about Michael Ritchie, who directed Prime Cut. and Lee did not like him at all. And he said as much in a Rolling Stone interview he did, that I can't stand that motherfucker. He said, the worst thing in the world I regret in my whole career is being in that movie and working with Michael Ritchie. He said, and he was talking about Sissy Spacek, who's also in the film. He said, if he'd have told that young girl to suck my dick, she would have done it because she was afraid, and so is every young actor. And I told him to go to hell. And that was the other story.
Well, but that was like a nice story. He wasn't being, that was wholesome compared to the other story. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, actually, yeah. and here's the thing. I interviewed several women who at the time were young actresses, maybe just starting in the business, or I had read what they said about working with Lee Marvin, and almost to a person, they said he was very chivalrous, he was very gentlemanly, very caring, and he treated women in a movie with respect. Sissy Spacek, who wrote her autobiography, mentioned that. I interviewed Kay Lenz, who co-starred with Lee in The Great Scout and Kid House Thursday, and she said he was the kindest man in the world. He practically took care of her in the way he treated her. And there's a story that Sissy Spacek tells in her autobiography where she says, when Lee was introduced to her, she goes, Lee had blue eyes, okay? And he told her, he said, look, stay the hell away from me if you see my eyes turn green, which, by the way, is a phenomenon that can actually happen. It's rare, but it can happen. Yeah, and she said, and he goes, because if they turn green, you do not want to be around me. And apparently that's true because he got really pissed off at Michael Ritchie and his eyes turned green.
Oh, Lee, you handsome devil.
Yeah, right?
He did his other movies. He married Pamela, who he had a romance with when he was a kid, right?
Pretty much, yeah. He was just out of the service when he started dating her, and she was in high school. You
didn't meet her, right?
No, I did not. I tried. I spoke to her on the phone, and she wouldn't talk to me for a myriad of reasons, and I found out the biggest reason was that she was writing her own book.
She did write a book?
Yeah, it was called Lee, a Romance. And basically, it's not really about Lee. It's her autobiography.
Who cares? Not for nothing.
Right. And that's another thing. Her lawyer, yeah, she was a very litigious woman. Litigious, however you pronounce it. In that her lawyer contacted me and said to cease and desist. You're not allowed to write this book.
Wow.
And I said, excuse me, I am. He was a public figure. He has since passed away, and there's a legal precedent, which is a terrible thing to say, but it's true. The dead have no privacy. And so consequently, I can write a book about Lee Marvin. I never heard from him again, her lawyer.
Really a lot of nerve, quite frankly, to be, what I mean?
She wanted to corner the market on Lee Marvin.
Please.
Mm-hmm.
How did Betty feel about her? Not wrong.
Betty and her son Christopher, whom I got to know too. I love what Christopher said about about Pam. He said, Pam Marvin was one of those women who would go around wearing a nylon pantsuit like she was really something special, and in her purse she had a fifth of vodka. That's how he described her.
But she was like a pretentious beast, obviously.
Right.
And oh my.
And Betty said that when she met Pam at her daughter's wedding, and God, how did she put it to me again? I don't remember. But what she said about Pam was hysterical. It was something along the lines like, God, she looks so much older than Lee, and Lee looks like hell. Something along those lines. I don't remember what it was. And when she met up with Lee again, she said, Lee said, because it was his daughter, Lee said, I suppose I have to foot the bill for this, don't I? And Betty said, oh, but that's your privilege, darling.
Yeah, he was not the greatest with his kids. And Pam didn't sound like a nice woman.
No, she wasn't.
and obviously telling you can't write a book, get lost, honey. It's not like you wrote a lot about her anyway. Nobody.
He actually, at the end of his life, he actually kicked her out.
Good for him.
But she wouldn't go.
Well, not a shocker from what you've written. So let's go into his last years in his career. He was not when did he really start getting ill? The effects from the alcohol and all the cigarettes he smoked.
Well, believe it or not, he was 63 when he died.
Yeah.
Okay. He looked 83.
Yeah, he looked really old.
He went to visit his brother, he and Pam, and his brother Robert and his sister-in-law Joan. They both told me, they go, we thought he had AIDS. He looked so bad. And, because that was the thing at the time that was scaring so many people. Right. The AIDS scare. And he didn't have AIDS. He just, he aged himself.
Emphysema, the alcoholism.
Yeah. Betty told me that, it wasn't Betty. It was Christopher, that he had to use an oxygen tank to breathe. And, a mask. And he would take it off and light a cigarette, which is pretty trippy.
I've read that too. There's an actress, Sylvia Sidney. She was like in her 80s. She had cancer. You like her?
I love Sylvia Sidney. But look at what she looked like when she was younger.
Oh my God, she was a babe.
When she made movies at Warner Brothers.
Oh my God.
In the 30s, and then for some reason, I guess Tim Burton took a liking to her because he put her in Beetlejuice and Mars Attacks, and I think the character she played in Beetlejuice smoked a cigarette, but she smoked it out of her, because Tim Burton did weird things like this. She smoked it out of her throat.
Yeah.
There was a hole in her throat, and she would puff at that. Yeah.
And that's what they did. And she was taking chemo because she had the lung cancer, and then she would start smoking.
Yeah, right.
Chemotherapy. So it's like, what are you doing? Just live your life, smoke away, and why are you bothering to torture yourself like that? But she was a babe.
Yes, she was.
Terribly. In the 70s, there's this movie on YouTube. It's Myrna Loy, her, Helen Hayes, and some other actress. And it's like, they're like 50s, 60s.
The Snoop Sisters or something like that?
No, it was a different movie. I can't think
wait a minute. Wasn't it called something like Do Not Bend, Fold, or Mutilate?
Yes, like Mutilate with Vince Edwards.
Right. Yeah, yes. It was a TV movie. Yeah.
Yes.
I remember that.
I like that movie. I'll link it for you guys. I don't know if it's still on, but these women were like 50, late 50s. And because of the alcohol and the smoking, they looked a hell of a lot older. But we're getting on.
They did that. That's okay. They did that with men, too. There was a movie called Ghost Story that had.
Oh, I love that movie. I have that.
John Houseman, Melvin Douglas, Fred Astaire, and I forgot who the fourth actor was. But yeah, when you have veteran classic actors like that, put them to work, man. And they'll deliver every time.
Yeah, it was
and actresses, excuse me.
Fairbanks, and it was
that's it.
Melvin Douglas as well,
and John Houseman and Fred Astaire.
Yeah, good movie. I really liked it. Yep. Melvin Douglas was fabulous. Everybody can find this movie with George C. Scott. It's the horror film. What the heck is the name of that movie? It's so good. Anyway, I'll try to figure it out. But so Lee was not feeling his best. He moved to Hawaii. Did he end up moving to Hawaii or Arizona?
Arizona.
And wasn't there like
he was gonna move to Palm Springs, but he was told it's not Palm Springs, somewhere in the San Fernando Valley, and he was told that's not going to help you, Lee, especially with all the smog out there. You better go somewhere where the air is cleaner. So he went. He moved to Arizona. He moved to Tucson,
and he really wasn't working too much. But he did do a TV series, didn't he? What was that? Did they do a Dirty Dozen TV series or something?
Not a series. It was a TV movie. It was a sequel. And by the way, they did later, even after he passed away, they did 2 more sequels, and then they did do a TV series. Excuse me.
Which probably flopped, right? Big time flopped.
Yeah, the guy who wrote the novel, I got to interview him through somebody else, a lady named Beverly Gray, who's also an author. she interviewed him about 2 years before he died, and she gave me the interview. So I was able to get a lot of information from him. And he actually wrote a screenplay, a teleplay for the TV series for one episode. And they turned it down. And he said when you watch the show, which it did air for like a half a season on the new Fox network, he said it looked like it was filmed in a phone booth in Ukraine, which is an interesting thing to say.
Yeah.
But the first sequel was called The Dirty Dozen, The Next Mission. And Lee looked like hell. It just was really, really sad. And that was one of the last things he ever did. The very last film he ever made was called The Delta Force with Chuck Norris. And he looked pretty bad there, too. I interviewed Robert Vaughn, who co-starred in the movie. And they didn't have any scenes together, but they had scenes where they had to talk to each other, like, on big telescreens or whatever. And he told me that watching Lee Marvin, he goes, it took him like 5 minutes to get out of the chair. It just was so hard for him to move. And when he made a previous film, the one with directed by Michael Apted, Gorky Park, which, by the way, he was wonderful in. The first day on the movie, they shot it in Finland, which was doubling for Russia. He had to be rushed to the hospital because he had an attack of emphysema. And they ran lines and rehearsed in Lee's hospital room, him and William Hurt.
Well, he
was hurting towards the end of his life.
Yeah, and then he went in. He was on an oxygen tank, and he basically had enough.
Yeah,
and he pulled the thing. He's like, "Leave me alone. I don't want to do this anymore."
He didn't have a death wish, but I don't believe he had a death wish. But he didn't mind dying. He was okay with that, in the sense that he was tired. His son went and visited him in the hospital when he was hospitalized, and he didn't. He said he looked like the skin was barely pulled over his face. He looked like a human skull. He looked so bad, and his pallor was kind of grayish. And Christopher said he was there with his three sisters. Excuse me. They went and visited him in the hospital, and he looked really bad. And one of his co-stars from Monty Walsh, Mitch Ryan, whom I got to interview, said although nobody accused the doctors who were treating him of malpractice, they made the mistake of giving him steroids, putting Lee on steroids to help him breathe. Well, the problem with doing that was it actually clogged up his lungs. There are, tiny little microscopic holes in the lungs that the steroids filled up. And consequently, he died. Officially, he died of a heart attack, but it was all this stuff combined. He was at the end.
Yeah, I think not that he had a death wish, but I think sometimes you get to the point where this ain't living. You know what I mean? It's like, this ain't
pretty much.
Yeah, it's something. Anyway, Dwayne, do you know we've almost talked for 2 hours?
I can't believe. I know it must have been a while because my girlfriend was puttering around behind me. And,
she's like,
and she didn't expect me to be talking this long, so she's going to do what she's got to do, which I understand.
I don't blame her. But we've talked for 2 hours, and I have really enjoyed this, and I really enjoyed the book.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's Lee Marvin, Point Blank. It's available on Amazon. And the other book is called Killing Generals, The Making of the Dirty Dozen.
And they are both really good. Even though we talked a long time, we missed tons and tons of stuff. And Killing Generals has scoop on everybody. It is such a good book. Both of them are wonderful. I will link you up to Amazon, show you where you can get it. And that's a scoop.
Okay, well, I'll give you another scoop real quick. A lot of people don't know this, but for the last maybe year and a half, I've been working on a new biography on the actor Roy Scheider.
Ooh, I like him.
I was hoping you would say that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm getting some great exclusives.
Yes, so you come on when you do that. I would love to hear you talk about Roy.
Oh, thank you. I would love to do that too.
Mr. Jaws, he's great. I love his face. It always reminds me of sort of a bull terrier. He has that sort of, I just love his face. It's different. It's a cool face.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I saw, he did a lot of movies, and I saw one freaky horror film. Do you know what one I'm talking about? Like the father, he's a drunk in it, and it's like a really low budget horror film, but it's really good.
It wouldn't happen to be the Mr. Fingerprints, would it?
I don't know. It's like a period piece from maybe early 1900s, 1890, something like that.
Huh.
I'll send you the link to it. It's interesting, and he was very good in it. And
wow.
I was like,
okay.
wow.
Yeah, please do.
It was 60s. It was, and I was shocked to see him in it.
Oh, wait a minute. Was it black and white?
Yeah, he's drunk, and they think the father is not dead.
That was his very first film.
I love that movie. It is cheesy, but I love it. Love it.
Yeah, and it's hysterical. It's so much fun to watch. Yeah, The Curse of the Living Corpse.
Yes, I love it. I highly recommend it, you guys. It's Cheeseburger Deluxe. It is a fun It's a good summer watch. You know what I mean? You're like, it's hot. Let me watch this cheesy movie, but it's really good. Anyway, Dwayne, I enjoyed this immensely, and you will come on when Roy's around, and I really appreciate you coming on. This was a lot of fun for me.
Thank you so much. Same here. I really enjoyed it. It was worth waiting for.
Good. For me too. So
terrific.
Thank you everybody for listening. Till next time, again, Dwayne Epstein, Lee Marvin, point blank, Lee Marvin, and the Dirty Dozen. I will link you all to his page. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dwayne. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Listen to the stories of 10 songs.